And, you're looking at a scenario here where on the northeast side of the center is where we are now for that occurring. And so that does include the western side of the metro New Orleans area, out through St. Charles, out through St. John, Lafourche, St. James parishes. And I've got a little bit more of a zoomed out look here because we've also been talking about the past couple of days, those bands off to the east, that band pushing east through, the afternoon time frame. Still that tornado threat out there as some of those cells move inland. I tell you what's amazing here is we had one tornado warning at, like 12:30 today, and then nothing since. That's why this storm has been, and they're all different. That's what's, so fascinating to watch. They're all different. The impacts can be the same, but the structure, how they behave are different. And so what we're seeing here now is the really, really intense stuff up along the I-10 corridor. I think Brantley's right on the money. You can start to see some of that activity moving up towards the I-12 corridor as well. And I believe we've got Mallory Smith up there here that we can go to probably in a little bit. But, that's what we're going to be looking at here as we go through the next few minutes. And there is a tornado warning. We were just talking about that. Brantley, you've got it pulled up over there, so let's get to you with that.
Yeah, we just had a tornado warning issued for St. Tammany Parish. This is going to include areas just south of Slidell until 7:45. So current time right now is 7:22. It's going to go for about another 22, 23 minutes. This is harder to tell than normal when it comes to a tropical system where tornadoes can be on the radar because they are a little bit lower in the atmosphere. They're often quick spin-up tornadoes that are on the weaker side. Usually these end up being EF0, EF1 tornadoes. It's not uncommon that we see them, especially on the right side of the storm. So here's what we're looking at, where we're seeing that possible rotation rolling in right now. This is going to be where we have the brighter shades of brighter shades of blue here, starting to pop up here right north of 90, and that's going to be moving towards the northwest because this system is rotating with the storms, with the hurricane, so it's going to be moving towards the northwest very slowly. This is going to include areas from Slidell over towards Lacombe, and again it goes until 7:45. So I'm going to pause this here, and you can see right here where this blue dot is, that's where they're looking at that possible rotation. Again, this was probably going to be one of those weaker systems that's an EF0 or an EF1. It is possible it can be stronger, but we also have higher wind gusts around that as well. It's a very, windy part of the system that's rolling through. They're already seeing some gusts there of 40, 50 miles an hour. So you add in this extra storm here, that's definitely going to cause some issues. Hank?
Yeah, I agree, Brantley. You don't have to have necessarily a tornado on the ground, of course, as you know, to get that wind damage potential. And like we talk about with these tropical systems, tornado can be short-lived. It can move quickly. And so you need to take shelter. I thought we would see probably 20 tornado warnings by now. We haven't done that. But if we start to now see these picking up through the evening time frame, I really want you to be aware, if you're watching, especially on the North Shore here, that if you get under one of these tornado warnings, you need to take it seriously. They don't all pan out. That doesn't necessarily mean we're going to have one on the ground, but there could be, and they could cause damage in a very quick fashion. You can see that rotation that Brantley was talking about there, headed over towards I-10 and the Highway 11 corridor near Howes Beach, passing west of that, and then over towards Lacombe there. And again, I'm not guaranteeing there's a tornado on the ground. There's rotation showing up, so you need to be seeking shelter in a safe place, the lowest level of your home, interior room, interior hallway. That's decent rotation. It's better than what we see other times when we get these tropical tornadoes. They don't always show up as great rotation. That's the problem with them. They're hard to spot. It's not like a summertime thunderstorm, supercell, anything like that. But certainly we do have the potential for at least some wind damage there, maybe a tornado on the ground as that heads right over to the northwest towards Eden Isle, and then sort of the Bonfouca area there over the next 10 to 15 minutes. So if you're in Eden Isle, I definitely think you should be taking shelter right now. Lots of neighborhoods there along the Highway 11 corridor. This is going to move super fast. You need to take shelter now, and then you're back out in the next 10 minutes here. But be aware that you've got that rotation coming through, and you may have a situation where we're seeing potentially damaging scenario there. That is the first tornado warning that we've seen in a very long time. Now, it's possible we start to get more as you look back off to the east here, where you have these individual cells coming in past Lake Bourne here. Coastal parts of St. Bernard, as these start to circulate inland they don't, they can produce water spouts, but they really start to produce that rotation once they move inland. The friction of the land, you've got winds higher up moving faster than the winds at ground level because of the land. And so that's what creates that wind shear. That's what, creates that effect of that rotation. So heads up there, we're going to keep a very close eye on that as we go through the next few hours. And then we're also watching, this tremendous still energy here on the South Shore, just flood warnings everywhere, flash flood warnings. And as Brantley was mentioning, some of that activity now looking stronger on the North Shore as well. So we're going to keep an eye on those wind gusts here. We've seen these gusts into the 50s at times on the South Shore here within that red band, and 60s as well. Tremendous rainfall flooding over here across parts of St. Charles, Lafourche Parish, now into northern Jefferson and Orleans Parish. We're going to have big-time street flooding here. Some of that heavier rain now working its way north into the 190 and I-12 corridors up on the North Shore. And then, of course, look how fast this is moving. I mean, you pick up that little part of the cell already zipping over towards Highway 11. So that's what I'm talking about. If you get under one of these tornado warnings through the evening, certainly don't go out and try to find them. There's a lot of rain. You're not going to see them. It's also dark. But just get in a safe place as quick as possible because these things move so quickly. You see even in real time there, the Weather Service is trimming that warning box down as that cell continues to move off to the northwest. So we'll keep an eye on that, see if it maintains rotation as it heads over to the Lacombe area. But, passing Eden Isle, if you're in that Lacombe area, that Bonfuca area, as we saw on the map there, make sure you're in a safe place. Take shelter there. We've got some more cells coming in behind that, and we're still dealing with this heavy rain here on the South Shore. Brantley, I know you've got that velocity pulled up over there, so we'll take another gander at that for you.
Right, we just had that rotation pass between Slidell and Eden Isle, and it looks like right now it should be near Lacombe in just the next 3 to 4 minutes. These things are very fast moving.
Oh, yeah.
It's moving northwest at 40 miles an hour, which is very fast for a tornado or a potential tornado. Usually we don't see them moving that quickly, but with a tropical system, it kind of changes things here. But we are looking at that rotation starting to get a little bit more broad here on our most recent scans. As we put a pause here on it, it's not quite as tight as it was just a few minutes ago. Still certainly some rotation there, certainly some high wind gusts possible as well, regardless of whether there's a tornado present or not. So that can send flying debris towards your home. So if you're in the warned area, regardless if there's a tornado or not actually on the ground, now's the time to make sure that you're staying away from doors and windows. You want to put as many walls between you and the outside as possible, and you want to be on the lowest level of whatever building you're in. If you're in a mobile home, it would be a good idea now to get to a sturdier structure because this, again, is going to be moving very fast. I do think that the rotation that they're watching is on the northern end of this polygon that they've drawn out here, so it's more towards the Slidell area right now. It is going to continue to move towards the northwest, but it might hug the northern end of this tornado warning area. But I do think it will be near Lacombe probably in the next 3 to 4 minutes, maybe 5 minutes, because it is moving so quickly. We'll be watching to see if we've gotten any reports here of damage or anything like that. Of course, we'll relay those to you. We're currently chatting with the emergency managers and the Weather Service constantly right now that are helping us get out some of this information. So we're still watching a few more cells behind that. Like Hank was saying, we're going to continue to see things feeding into the same spots here. So even though this tornado warning is going to expire within the next 15 minutes or so, we could still see a few more of these as the system continues over the next few hours here. We may see more of those storm cells coming in from the Gulf and the Mississippi Sound. So the tornado threat, like we were saying, was expected to go up as we went into the evening hours, and here it is. We're starting to see some of those low top spinners, those weaker tornadoes starting to fire up here with those tropical storms, clouds that are a little bit lower in the atmosphere. So again, that rotation looking a lot weaker right now. It doesn't look too tight at the moment, so it looks like it's starting to get a little bit more broad, but still a good idea to stay safe and stay away from doors and windows.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're in one of those warning boxes, you got to stay inside, get in that lowest level interior room, protect yourself. Like we said, these are moving so fast, you're not going to be in that hallway or bathroom long, closet, whatever the case, but get there while you can. And Brantley, it'll be interesting to see, can we get this wind energy to translate to the North Shore? I mean, obviously we've seen things increase here on the South Shore. Again, Metro New Orleans area, not necessarily the the 60s and 70s maybe that we were talking about potentially over the past couple of days, but we're solidly in the 50s now with these wind gusts at the airport at 55. We're in the 30s now here along the North Shore, so I'll be curious to see, can we get that wind to translate across the lake to the North Shore over the next few hours, or does this storm weaken enough? And this is what we talk about when we talk about nowcasting and sort of watching as we go along here. Will we be able to get these 50s up across the northern half of the area where you've got, more widespread trees that could be impacted, more widespread power outages that could happen? We're really starting to see those power outages cranking up here across the South Shore, especially down to the southwest. You've got this big time spin here coming across the South Shore. It has started, again, it has been trending to the east now, and that was the question earlier today. Will this start to trend east enough to get the heavier impacts to the metro area and the heavier rain? And the answer looks like yes in terms of that flooding. And so now we're going to ask the question, does it translate to the North Shore before it weakens? I think the answer is probably 50-50 at this point. I think we'll start to see those wind gusts picking up into the 40s across the I-12 corridor. Do we get all the way into the 50s? I think it's going to be pretty fringe. Brantley, I guess you got the latest model run there with some of those wind forecasts there. So, we're kind of borderline, I guess, on how fast we get here.
Yeah, earlier we were showing this, and it showed a wind gust potentially of about 70, 75 miles an hour in Houma at right around 7 o'clock, and that's pretty much what we
had
got.
The 70 down there. I know, that's crazy.
Yeah, so this model continuing to still show wind gust potential of about 40 to 50 miles an hour for the North Shore within the next hour or so. So I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing those winds start to ramp up, but I'm still, surprised that on the south side of the eye so far that those wind gusts have still been so strong, especially for a system that's getting sheared apart on the bottom half. I mean, we have a lot of dry air, that wind shear really doing a number on the bottom half of that core of the storm. So it's surprising that we're seeing such strong wind gusts there still. So I wouldn't be surprised that if that trend holds, that we see some slightly higher gusts than what this is showing across the South Shore going into the next few hours. But it does look like we still have that potential for some of those tropical storm force wind gusts, 40, 50, and this model showing up to 55 miles an hour if possible for Ponchatoula. This is just one model run of a single model, but it gives you an idea of what the possibilities are here. So I wouldn't lock in on any individual number in any specific place, but it just gives you an idea here, kind of the range of possibilities. We're looking at about 40 to 50, maybe up to 55 or so for the North Shore as we go into the next few hours. And then by about midnight or so, most of us start to drop back down into that 30 to 40 mile per hour range.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're right. We're sort of fringe on how much wind does get on the North Shore, but, safe to say 40s likely with those gusts, and then maybe into the 50s as well. We've got some reporters scattered all around the area, so I'll bring back in Kurt and Susie here because we've been talking about, the rain and the impacts here, but obviously we want to be able to show people as well, guys, if we want to sort of take a look at what's going on out there.
Now, it certainly seems like some of the more populated areas are beginning to feel the brunt of the storm. In New Orleans, the water in the low-lying areas, let's call it the bottom of the bowl, if you will, it is starting to rise there.
We're talking about, in particular, South Carrollton Avenue at Olive Street, the Holly Grove neighborhood. WGNO's Ashley Hamilton is there to show us what's happening and how deep the water is. Ashley.
Yeah, Susie, Kurt, things have definitely picked up down here in New Orleans. I will say cars are still flying by, even though people have been told to actually slow down. Something I actually want to show you is cars have actually started to get stuck in the water as we speak. There are two cars that have been here for a short amount of time. Someone that passed by has told us. As you can see, the right side of the entire street is flooded. You cannot even see the sidewalk currently. As you can see, breezes are getting stronger. We find branches on the ground. Police have actually stood in the area for a couple minutes, just hopefully trying to get people to slow down. I've seen about 10 to 15 cars since we've been here, but I will say, please stay off of the roadway. You don't want to end up stuck in water like these two cars. Again, something to remember is that curfew did start for 6 p.m. here in New Orleans until tomorrow around 12 noon is what the mayor is asking. So if you can stay off the roadway, please do. It's not safe to come outside, but also check on your neighbors if you still have power or a battery on your phone. Call your neighbors, see how people are actually doing, just to make sure they know that others are thinking about them. But please stay off the roads. The mayor, Latoya Cantrell, said it's time to hunker down. I told you guys that was her words all day. Do not come on the road if you do not have to. Right now, winds are picking up, making its way here to New Orleans. We'll be here all day for you guys. Kurt, Susie?
Yeah, stay out of your car. Don't try to drive anyway. Thanks, Ashley. We also have a news crew that's been getting battered by strong wind in St. Charles Parish.
That's WGNO's Rick Gogrieve. He is in Hanville to show us the rain there. Rick.
Well, we're having trouble, obviously, with Rick Gogrieve's microphone, but as you can imagine, it's hard to do a lot of things technically when you're out in the wind and the rain. But we have two more WGNO reporters to go to.
The weather is a complicating factor for sure, but we've been showing you the rain going north, and it's actually flattening out and going wider as well into eastern Jefferson Parish, low-lying areas there.
WGNO's Jordan Lippincott has been in Lafitte today. Jordan.
Hey, Susie, we're technically in the town of Jean Lafitte, but Lafitte is a little more south down LA 45. We were there earlier, but we had to kind of find a place where we could shelter in place as well and be safe. The wind has certainly picked up. I'm not sure how much you can see here just because on my end it's pretty dark, but I can see these trees. It's kind of a scary sight to see because the wind is so powerful. You can certainly decipher between what we're in now, a hurricane, versus just any other rain event. The wind is just so strong. It's really more powerful than the rain we have right now. And earlier we checked in with Jefferson Parish. The parish president, Cynthia Lee Sheng, and other officials kind of shared their update on their end. And it doesn't seem like power outages are a big issue right now. I think they said 11,000 out of the entire parish, and it's kind of sporadic throughout the parish, but it's really that sewage backup that they're seeing. So they are asking people in Jefferson Parish to conserve their water so it's not a bigger mess than they'll have to deal with tonight, overnight, and into tomorrow. And earlier, I've been reminding people that a mandatory evacuation order is in effect right now for those who live in Grand Isle and Lafitte, and a curfew is in effect for those who live in Grand Isle because, as we know, people like to stay, and they like to stay with their homes, and a lot of the houses are raised, so they kind of know how to deal with this strong type of storm. But Kurt, as you were mentioning earlier, for Lower Jefferson Parish, things could be worse. Obviously, we've got the strong wind, the lights are flickering, but they've seen it much worse. And I don't want to jinx anything over here, but as of right now, it's really that wind is an issue, and you're going to want to stay inside. You're going to want to stay off the roads because it is dark and it is windy, and the basins or the catches on the side of the highway are full of water. So when it's dark, you really can't see where you're going. So it's good to stay inside. And once again, Jefferson Parish officials are asking the people who live here in the parish, Lower Jefferson Parish, but also Metairie, Kenner, Harahan, just conserve that water because they are seeing some issues with the sewage, and nobody likes that kind of problem. Kurt, Susie?
And Jordan, tell us where you are. What kind of building is that behind you? That we see the posts. It looks kind of like a fence or a deck. Where are you exactly?
So we are at they call it the Civic Center, and so inside, my photographer and I, we're the only people here, but inside, it looks like an event space where they host events, and then right down here is where the Jean Lafitte Town Hall is right now. They're calling it their temporary location because where they were before was damaged during Hurricane Ida. So we're kind of in the epicenter of the town. So it's an event space / town hall and / library. The library's here too.
Well, look, it sounds very encouraging, I would say, for sure. And looking at the radar, it looks like you guys are going to get a little bit of a break, at least, from the rain for a little while. That's on the way. Thank you, Jordan.
Okay.
Reporting live there in Lafitte.
And now we want to go back to WGNO's Rick Gogrieve. We had trouble hearing him a moment ago. He's in St. Charles Parish in Hanville. Rick.
Yes, Susie and Kurt, sorry about that just a moment ago, but we're back up and running. But like I was trying to say, according to the fire department here, we are apparently on the edge of the eye of the hurricane, and it sure feels like it right now because that wind is coming stronger than ever. I don't really think because of how dark it is you can really see much. I can't really point out much, so I'm going to step out just to show you just how strong these winds and this rain is coming down. It is brutal out here right now. I mean, the wind is coming down strong. You can hear it. You can feel it. It is absolutely pounding. And from what my phone and my cameraman's phone just went off saying that again, it is a flood warning, a flash flood warning until 9:45 at least right now. So again, as I emphasized last time, and I'm going to keep emphasizing it again and again, stay inside, avoid bodies of water you see on the road. And even if I don't know why you'd be on the road right now. I'm encouraging people to stay off of the road right now and outside at all. You should stay inside. The fire department is telling me to tell people to stay inside right now. It is very, very strong winds, very, very strong rains. As you can see, I'm getting absolutely soaking wet right now. It is, like I said, the edge of the eye right now. It is very powerful stuff right now. And again, I believe it's only a Category 2. That's something that Hank would more likely tell you right now, but it is very, very powerful. The lights actually just flickered over here, and the power even went out for just a moment. It actually came on, thankfully, but again, this stuff is very, very powerful, what's going on. I believe the streets are starting to flood. There's actually one car, and you can even see the streets, I believe. You can see his tires. You can see the water even coming up. So it even seems like the roads themselves are flooding really, really badly. So definitely, please, please, please stay off of the roads right now if you are out here in Hanville or really anywhere out here in St. Charles where this flood watch is going on at least until 9:45. I'm sure maybe if this rain continues the way it's going, this flood watch will continue, but that is not something I can guarantee. But at least until 9:45, please, please, please keep an eye on this flood watch. But until then, just stay home until this hurricane passes through. This rain is really strong. This wind is really strong. Again, Susie and Kurt, I cannot emphasize enough. Stay home. Be safe. Susie and Kurt, back to y'all.
Yeah, let some of the water get out of your boots, and we'll check in again with you a little later. We can really see the wind there. Thanks, Rick.
Now, we told you just a few minutes ago about the tornado warning for the Slidell area. Right now, as far as we can tell, the eastern side of St. Tammany Parish might be dealing with a little bit more than the western side. We can find out a little bit more about that with our Mallory Smith. She is on the western side in Covington, outside the EOC there. Mallory.
Yeah, standing right outside the Emergency Operations Center. We've been out here pretty much all day. It's definitely picked up within the last couple of hours. I'm here with Michael Vincino with the Emergency Operations Center. Any updates in the last couple hours?
Well, you see what's happening here behind us. The weather has made its way to St. Tammany Parish. It looks like some of those outer feeder bands are starting to hit our area. We just saw that the folks over in the Eden Isles into Lacombe area were under a tornado warning. Again, Francine has arrived in St. Tammany Parish, so we're just monitoring, seeing what's going to happen, and plan for whatever it is. I mean, we've prepared as much as we can. Now we're just telling people to stay home, stay where you are, and we'll get through this together.
We were just looking at the map. There's actually a few without power right now.
Yeah, about 1,500 without power in St. Tammany Parish. We have 3 different utility providers, and that's across all 3. It's unclear what's caused each one, whether it's it could have been various things, weather related or not. But we can expect there to be more outages tonight. St. Tammany is known for its beautiful tree canopy, but when a hurricane comes to town, that can turn into projectiles and hazards, hit power lines, knock them down. That's really why we're telling people to stay home. home. It doesn't take much for a pine tree to snap, fall over a road. It could get dangerous really quickly. So again, stay home, stay there until the morning. As soon as the sun comes up, as soon as the impacts are gone, we're putting our crews on the road, getting them out there and making sure that our community gets back open.
They do say, it can be very dangerous after a storm, though, as well. So I guess, what do you advise residents maybe to stay off the roadways while those crews are cleaning things up? What are you telling residents once the storm actually is clear?
Well, we've strategically placed our crews all across the parish so we can get into the communities as fast as possible and make sure that the debris is pushed out to the side of the road. If there's debris for the next couple of days, you're going to see it on the side of the roads because we're just trying to make sure that the roads are open. We'll come back and get that debris. Again, trying to make sure that the roads are clear, the utility companies can come in and restore power and make sure that everybody has the power, whether it's grocery stores or gas stations or, anybody, so we can return to business, return to normalcy as soon as possible. It's all about just getting back on your feet. We don't know what's going to happen tonight with Hurricane Francine. We're pretty hopeful that the impacts will be minimal, but you got to be prepared and you have to be ready for anything.
Yeah, you guys have been preparing very well. Thank you so much for talking with me tonight.
Thank you.
And we are going to be out here tonight for a few more hours now, just kind of tracking Francine, seeing how it's impacting Covington. But for right now, I'm going to send it back to you guys in the studio. You heard from Ashley and Rick tonight. Stay off the roads. That's probably the best advice that we can give you out here right now.
Okay, thank you, Mallory. We'll check back in with you later. We also want to take a look at the power outages, both from reporting by Entergy and by CLECO. First, we'll start with the Entergy power outages. Right now, more than 140,000 people don't have power statewide. On this map, it doesn't look as if that many people are in the red, but they are. Nearly 30,000 people without power in Lafourche Parish. About 26,000 have lost power in Terrebonne Parish. In Jefferson Parish, about 20,000 people have lost power, people or customers. And in Orleans Parish, it's dropped at about 19,000 customers of Entergy who don't have power.
Again, that's Entergy. Now let's check CLECO. Power outages from CLECO customers, just over 18,000 customers don't have electricity. Most of those outages, we're told, are in and around Terrebonne Parish, which has been hit so hard by this storm. But there is about 1,000 customers or so on the North Shore where we may very well see that number grow, though, as this storm advances and heads north.
Yes, we just heard Michael Vinceno there in St. Tammany Parish say just simply, Francine has arrived in St. Tammany Parish. So let's go to our Chief Meteorologist, Hank Allen, and Meteorologist Brantley Kike to find out what you guys are seeing there. Has it arrived in St. Tammany?
Sort of. You've still got the bulk of the intense activity here on the South Shore at this point, and that's where we're still seeing those heavy bands of rain and wind here across the I-10 corridor. But look what's happening now. That is a brand new tornado warning over there in Pearl River County, and this is what we've been talking about, and Brantley mentioned this specifically as well a little while ago, that you're now starting to see some of these individual cells. You've got this band which is sort of wrapping back around here, sort of offshore from St. Bernard, through the Chandelier Sound. It's starting to curve around the center of Francine, and now we're starting to get some of these tornado warnings flying off. We haven't seen much so far today. Thought we'd see a lot more to this point, but we're starting to see some now. So this is until 8:15. This is for areas of western Hancock County. So you can see just west of Bay St. Louis, but that does include the Waveland area. It does include Highway 90 up towards I-10. So if you are in that zone, including Waveland, basically southwestern Hancock County, anybody living in that zone, please take shelter. Prepare yourself for that potential tornado. And I think what we have here most likely is a scenario where you have, and you hear some communities, Claremont Harbor, Ansley, Napoleon, as you go through the next 20 minutes. Notice how that cell is still over water. So I would imagine what you have here is the Weather Service picking up on that rotation in the form of a waterspout that has the potential to move on shore as a tornado, and certainly we can get that in these tropical situations. So here's what we're looking at right there. You can see again that sort of light blue shading indicates a little bit of that change in direction. This is wind data, mind you, so the green is heading towards the radar, so that blue is sort of changing the direction a little bit. And keep in mind, these aren't like supercells. We're not going to get these amazing hook echoes and all that stuff. You're just trying to pick out little areas of rotation that may or may not create a tornado, but it's still offshore. So what you have here could be a waterspout that is going to move on shore. There's Ansley. You got Bayside Park right here. The orange box is a marine warning, so that's sort of merging into that tornado warning now. really across coastal parts of Hancock County. I would anticipate here as you go through the next few moments, especially along the coastal areas, right along the coast there in Hancock, sort of east of Ansley, is where we could see the best chance for any sort of tornadic touchdown or something like that. So please take shelter. If you're within that red box, this thing is moving quick. All these tornadic cells here are moving super fast, of course, and you don't have much time to react or get in a safe place. So if your phone goes off, if you've got that weather radio, which I always recommend having, obviously, but you don't have it now, you're not getting one, but in the future, if you get that alert, take shelter, lowest level of your home, interior room, interior hall, closet, bathroom, something like that, and do it quick. I mean, these things are moving 40 miles an hour. They'll be out of there quick. But you got to get in a safe place as those are pushing in. And you can see this is a little bit stronger activity now, as indicated by some of that lightning moving in there as well. So we want to keep an eye on that cell as it's moving inland here. Brantley, tornado warning number 2 in the past hour, so it's obvious we're starting to see some of these cells intensify now as they're moving inland.
Yeah, we were talking earlier about that satellite imagery where we had those thunderstorms blowing up on the north side of the storm. I think just the whole system overall, now that things are kind of becoming nocturnal here, that we're starting to see another regeneration of storms, and that trend's going to continue here, especially over in South Mississippi like we've been talking about. We've been watching this feeder band coming in here on the eastern side of the storm, and we have some special marine warnings out here right along this band, and that's where we have a lot of storms that are rotating. But over here a little bit closer to Waveland, Bay St. Louis. This is going to be just west of Bay St. Louis. So that's where we have that tornado warning in effect right now. And it looks like this is going to be near Shoreline Park in the next few minutes or so, and then probably Burlington by about 8 o'clock. So this is, again, a very fast-moving tornado warn cell here. When we have tornado warnings within a tropical storm or a hurricane, they are usually pretty fast-moving because they have that forward motion with the whole storm in addition to the speed that it has as an individual storm cell. So places like Ansley, this is going to be going towards I-10 here probably in the next 10 to 15 minutes. Let's go ahead and check out our velocity here. You can see what they were probably watching was what was a water spout that is about to move on shore if it hasn't already. So I want to go ahead and pause here our velocity map. And if we do that, we can see that this is just now about to move on shore here. So this is right on the coastline near Claremont Harbor. So that's going to be near the Silver Slipper Casino, for those that are familiar with the area right there along the waterfront. So there we'll see this water spout potentially moving on land as a tornado. We have the tornado warning in place. This goes until 8:15. So these are very quick tornado warnings. They don't last a long time because they're such fast-moving systems. But with that, you don't have as much time to get prepared. So the time for people downstream of this to get ready is a little bit shorter than usual. So if you're in the tornado warned area here in Hancock County, you need to go ahead and seek shelter away from doors and windows. You want to put as many walls between you and the outside as possible. And it's always a good idea to protect your head and your neck, because a lot of the injuries we see when it comes to tornadoes are from flying debris. And even if this isn't a tornado on the ground, even if this thing isn't actually touching land and it might just be a lot of gusty wind, it's still the same wind speeds, the same kind of wind that can produce the same amount of damage and cause the same amount of injury. So it needs to be taken just as seriously whether or not there's actually a tornado on the ground. But it does look like that rotation is looking like it is still holding steady there. It's not really broadening out too much just yet. So it's not as tight as the one we saw earlier that was going just south of Slidell, but it does look like it's still showing some rotation here. And I want to go ahead and try to move this out here a little bit to see if we can see any more of these rotating cells that are out here over the water. Yeah, if we go ahead and just pause this right here, we can. It'll let me pause it. There we go. Yeah, you can see that we have some of these areas out here over the water that are rotating. Now, these ones might be going a little bit farther north, more towards the Biloxi area. Those ones are a little bit farther away from the center of the storm compared to the one over here near just west of Bay St. Louis and Waveland. So it looks like that tornado warning is going to continue here. Doesn't look like they're going to cancel that one.
Yeah, we mentioned the Ansley community there. You can see that little rotation, it looks like, or at least part of something, trying to move right over that. Great example, too, of how those form over water. I mean, you saw a great, what we call a couplet, that red and green right next to each other with some of those cells over the water. Obviously, they lose a little bit of that as they move inland here. Some of them maintain it. That's where we get those tornadoes. But This is exactly what we talked about the past couple of days, that eastern band, as the dry slot pushes up, it pushes that band out, you start to get more rotation. And look at the lightning here. It's just an indication that you have more instability now. You have more lift in the atmosphere. You have more dynamics in place because we haven't seen that much lightning over the past few hours. So that indicates more intensity in those tropical thunderstorms and downpours that are offshore. And so as these rotate inland, you certainly do have a tornado threat with that. I wouldn't anticipate the tornado threat, closer to the center here. We're dealing with more just general wind gust potential here, still in the 50s across the South Shore. And so you got a couple of different factors going on. Also notice quite possibly the longest flash flood warning ever across the entire North Shore at this point. And so now we're going to start to anticipate maybe some water on the roads up here from basically Hancock County all the way over to, extreme eastern Livingston Parish at the moment. I mean, that's just a huge area of flash flood warning. And I think there's a combination there of that band moving in and sort of feeding through that zone over the next few hours. And then also some of this heavy rain from the South Shore, because keep in mind, we're talking about, we've been talking about the fast movement of this system through the day and how it's been moving at around 17 miles per hour. Well, it doesn't seem that fast now because we've been dealing with this for the past 4 or 5 hours here. And so 17 miles an hour with a center that broad, that's the problem. It's taking it so long to push across the area. We'll get the 8 o'clock update in here. I would imagine, we're down probably to 70 or 75 miles an hour, maybe down to tropical storm strength at this point. But that doesn't mean that you're still not releasing that wind energy as it moves inland and you're dealing with these gusts into the 50s and 60s. And we're still waiting for this thing to push farther to the north. Keep in mind, we're talking about being done with this as the center pushes through. And you can see to the south of that, you really don't have much rain left at all. But we're not going to be done with this completely across our area until this thing pushes north into southern Mississippi, up towards Macomb. Not southern Mississippi along the coast, up to the north. So we still have several more hours to go before we really write this thing off across the area. Now, the main area here is going to start to fade a little bit. It's going to start to dissipate in intensity over the next couple of hours. But I think Brantley's also right on the money in the sense that you can get these nighttime thunderstorms that sort of perk up a little bit in intensity because of the warmer water translating into more energy. You're going to get the center moving over the lake. Not that that creates a lot of energy, but it's not necessarily weakening it at that point. And so I still think you can get some of those gusts, again, maybe not in the 60s and 70s, but in the 40s and 50s across the northern half of the area. Now you can see that cell there in the tornado warning, how it sort of shrunk up as it moves inland. So there's no question that these cells, as they're over the open water here, produce more rotation, and then they have a harder time doing that as they move inland. That being said, you can also see that the feed of this, if you will, of this line is coming up right across Hancock County into southeastern St. Tammany Parish. And so if you're in those zones, basically Waveland, basically Bay St. Louis to Slidell, I think you really need to be keeping an eye out over the next couple of hours, have the phone handy, have the volume up, have those alerts ready to go in case a warning is popped up in your area, because that's the zone, I think, as we go through the next few hours here, that we're really going to start to see some of that tornadic potential move through. Wouldn't really worry about that across the rest of the area at the moment. Now, certainly we're worried about widespread street flooding. I think we'll continue to see power outages increase here on the South Shore with these gusty conditions, but they haven't yet. I mean, we have a lot. There's several parishes with 20,000 or more people without power, but we still haven't seen just that, and you hate to say credit to the New Orleans grid at this point, but, we've been seeing these gusty winds for a while. We still have power across a good portion of Orleans Parish, so, maybe things improving a little bit in that sense for today. We've still got another hour or so, I think, of these gusty conditions to go, but eventually they're going to lift to the north, and we may be able to skirt through with, a lot of us keeping power here on the South Shore, and then the street flooding being the main issue. So this is what I was talking about earlier today, where we're sort of transitioning this system, not that we're not going to see wind gusts, but it's almost transitioning more to the heavy rain threat and storyline there with the street flooding and all that, as opposed to some of those gusty conditions, at least now as the storm continues to move inland. Obviously, we saw wind gusts 80s, 90s down in Terrebonne Parish, and those were significant. But translating that more into that street flood potential here, and Brantley's got those warnings popped up, so I'm going to let him show you those in just a second. But let's take one more look here at this tornado warning that we still have ongoing to the east with that velocity here, and see if we can pick up anything. And again, sort of a broad circulation, but you would highlight that Ansley area right there for potential rotation here that is heading up towards Highway 90 there, east of Pearlington. So right, you see that little sort of notch in Highway 90 there, that little bend. That's where that storm is heading, and then also up towards I-10. So luckily not a tremendously heavily populated area, but if you're in this red box, I would certainly take shelter. That includes Ansley and on the northern side there. Pearlington, you'll probably miss out on most of that, but still good idea to get in a safe place until that pushes through. Otherwise, you can see that cell continuing to move off to the northwest very quickly. And again, more of these cells, and these are nasty, the ones out over the water. So as that band continues to move up, wherever that is, and we've talked about this the past couple of days really, eventually that band's going to move up eastern Mississippi, Alabama coastline, maybe even Florida Panhandle. We'll continue that tornado threat over there. Obviously, our concern is in our viewing area here, and we got that one tornado warning at the moment. And Brantley, just a ton of flash flood warnings out there for the time being here. A lot of that heavy rain out there.
Yeah, it looks like this is really going to be a flood threat for the metro, the North Shore, but it looks like the tornado threat right now is pretty isolated to the far eastern side of the storm. And that's going to be basically from, like you said, Bay St. Louis up through Slidell. So pretty much all of Hancock County, the eastern side of St. Tammany Parish, and it would also throw in Pearl River County in there as well as being part of that tornado threat right now. But we're not seeing these tornadoes lasting for very long. They're very quick moving systems. This one moving toward the northwest at 35 miles an hour. So it's very quickly moving towards the northwest there. It should be near Pearlington within the next few minutes, but now we're watching the flood concerns over the metro and for the North Shore. They just had that new flash flood warning issued, and it's going to go for a long time, for at least the next few hours. Now down by the coast for Houma, Chauvin, Dulat, Galliano, they are all going to start to dry out now. They're starting to see that rain come to an end, but those warnings continue for a little while longer just because it takes some time for that water to go down. And it's, we could still see a little bit more rain activity as that bottom half of the storm starts to roll through. But for the most part, we're starting to dry out. Now, we do have the flash flood warning for the New Orleans metro, and this one includes Kenner, Metairie, New Orleans, and all of the West Bank. This one has been upgraded recently to what they call a considerable flash flood threat. So many people probably got those alerts on their phone, those automated noises that come out on the WEA alerts there. And that is for the life-threatening flash floods. So they have the potential here to have some really heavy rainfall rates, 4 to 6 inches per hour. We've already seen in New Orleans about 2 or 3 inches just in the past hour or so. So you factor in another 2 or 3 inches over the next 30, 45 minutes, and it's going to overwhelm what the pumps can do. The pumps can only pump out about 1/2 inch to 1 inch of rain per hour. So I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing some flooding issues across the city where we have the drainage issues, and it's also more low-lying for areas that are a little bit higher ground like Kenner up towards Metairie, Elmwood. Those areas will likely see some flash flooding. It might just go down a little bit faster than those that are in the city of New Orleans. Now, the North Shore, they're not seeing the heaviest rain that they're going to see just yet. That really heavy rain band is still going to be for areas that is just right along the South Shore. But as we see that start to slowly progress north, I think as this moves across Lake Pontchartrain, we have the potential for this to possibly, get a little bit more moisture with it, and then, start to blow up once again, and we could see those heavier rainfall rates become an issue for areas right along the lakefront on the North Shore.
Yeah, it's a great point about the warnings. They don't all trigger on the cell phone, but usually the ones with the more significant, more life-threatening labeling there, they will. We'll send it back to Kurt and Susie. I know, guys, we've got Councilman Scott Walker on the phone here.
All right, thank you both. We'll check back in with you again, of course, just in a second.
The JP Councilman at Large, Scott Walker, joins us now on the phone. Scott, we can hear the wind and the thunder here in Metairie. Just have you heard of any specific problems in Jefferson Parish from the storm?
Nothing really more than what we're dealing with power outage-wise, which is about 22,000 or so people out of power right now in Jefferson Parish. And it looks like I could only hear a little bit about what Hank was saying, but if we get through the next 45 minutes or so in Jefferson Parish without losing power, then you should be in good shape. I think we'll we'll be almost in the clear at that point. So just keeping our fingers crossed it doesn't get much worse than it is, because that makes the job a lot easier for Entergy to restore the power after the fact.
Councilman, what about this sewer problem, this, stormwater getting into the sewer system? Are you able to flush your toilets? The parish president said some people can't.
Yeah, some are experiencing the sewer backup, some aren't. I don't think it's widespread yet, but the conserve water message is do it out of an abundance of caution, because we do have an aging infrastructure, as has been well chronicled, and to go with that, we've had a ton of rain, and that rain is sort of overwhelming the system right now. So it has led to a situation where you have the risk of your sewer backing up when you flush the toilet or overuse water in your home. So conserve wherever possible, and we'll let you know as soon as that threat is over. The water just needs to get down, and gravity is going to help us out. So it's washing dishes, doing laundry. Just limit those non-essential things as long as you can. Kind of stretch it out a little bit longer than you might normally.
Going into this event, as per usual, the lower lying areas of Jefferson Parish, Grand Isle, of course, probably the most fragile area of all, but Lafitte and the others, there was a great deal of concern on how they were going to fare. It seems like they've done pretty darn well.
Yeah, we've been looking at some cameras down on Lafitte and Grand Isle, and it looks pretty good. Just got some video from Lafitte. I mean, it's windy and it's rainy, and there's some flooding waters, but all in all, I think they've so far, knock on wood, made it through this okay. And it was never going to be an event where houses were getting torn down or anything like that, but I think it's a lot of psychological impact in those places too, because of what they dealt with a few years ago with Hurricane Ida. And now, just when some are getting back to where they were, and some are just now resolving insurance claims, all of a sudden you have to deal with this again. You're looking at sandbags, you're looking at flooding that could, and in Lafitte, when it floods and it brings in all that water, it leaves that black mud that goes through people's lawns and on the streets, and it's just a pain to clean up, and it just makes everybody's lives a little more difficult, and certainly something that people down there don't need. But so far, it looks like they've weathered this pretty well. We haven't heard of any major issues from either Grand Isle or Lafitte.
Councilman, in the rest of the parish, besides the potential for power outages, you've got the Terrytown Playground still as a shelter for anyone to go to if they want to after the worst of this gets through now, right?
Right. If you need to get to that shelter, give it another hour or so and make sure that it's safe to get out there and the wind isn't bad and the streets aren't flooded. And there is space. We were there earlier today, certainly not close to capacity in that shelter. If you do need it, it's there. Cots are provided. There are blankets. And if you need a ride to the shelter, you can call our EOC number, which is 504-349-5360. And again, I just said that's the EOC number. So if you have anything else, emergencies that you see anywhere that you may experience, 504-349-5360 is the Jefferson Parish Emergency Operations Center, and somebody will get to where you need to be and take care of the problem.
And we've talked about the power outages and the work that's going to happen moving forward to restore the power. Do we have an idea of what may have caused it? Because perhaps calls to the EOC included. Do we have a lot of downed trees that have knocked out power?
When I left the EOC a few hours ago, we only had about 4 downed trees in Jefferson Parish that we had reports of that impacted power in places. So I imagine that number has increased over the past couple of hours. I haven't inquired about it since I left, but if there are trees that went down, they did affect power lines. That's something that, because there are only, quote unquote, only 22,000 people in Jefferson Parish without power right now, it'll make the job of restoring power a little bit easier for Entergy, because it certainly isn't a situation like we saw after Hurricane Ida, where we had 10,000 poles down across the parish, whatever that number was, and we had so many oak trees down that fell, and it was a much different scenario and a bigger mess. Any final message for anybody in Jefferson Parish who's watching you right now? Yeah, if you're not signed up for our JP Alert system, please do so. You text JP Alert to 888-777, or for Spanish-speaking individuals, you can text JP Noticias to 888-777. No spaces in either of those words, JP Alert or JP Noticias to 888-777. And the Jefferson Parish website has a really good dashboard resource. If you go to jeffparish.gov, and it's got a bunch of different resources you can tap into for information that you may need along the way.
Councilman Scott Walker of Jefferson Parish, thank you so much for filling us in on a lot of different issues that people need to be aware of tonight. Thank you.
And thank you all for the work you're doing.
You bet.
All right, we want to get back to St. Charles Parish, which may be on the cusp of being out of the woods, at least for the rain portion of the storm.
WGNO's Rick Gogreve is still in Hahnville. Rick.
Yes, Susie and Kurt, that's exactly what I'm hearing from the fire department. The rain might be on its way out soon, but we're still getting a good bit of rain as of right now, and the wind is still going strong. Now, I have a little friend here, a flashlight to help look at what's going on right now, and what we're seeing pretty bad, and as y'all probably just saw, the lights just went out, so thankfully for this flashlight, it'll help us. But what we're seeing really right now is this street. It's got to be pretty hard, but these streets right here and all around, there we go, that's going to help right there. Right here, it is just completely flooded, and as we saw just a moment ago, and we saw another car as well, the street is absolutely covered in water, and this is not the only street here absolutely flooded. There are floods all over. We are in a complete flood watch all over this parish here. Now, one thing we're hearing as well is that the entire parish has been seeing a lot of power outages. Now, here at the fire department itself, we've been seeing a lot of flashes. I think about 3 or 4 times the power has flickered on and off. Now, what we're also hearing are a lot of reports of trees being knocked down. There's actually one tree over there. It's really kind of hard to see. You might be able to see it, but it's kind of hard through that light over there. There's a tree knocked down. A lot of trees are being shaken here. This pole right here has been shaking all night long. It's kind of nerving me right here, especially with this car right here. It should be all right, I believe, especially with us being kind of out of the woods in terms of the worst part. However, we are still under that flash flood watch, and like I'm seeing again, and like I'm saying again, we are seeing major flood action again, especially right here. This road again is completely flooded. We've seen a couple of cars, and it is just brutal flooding. And again, it is all over the parish. This is not the only road, so everybody, please do not drive in this condition. It is not safe. You will flood. Your car will get damaged. It is not a safe condition. Do not drive and do not leave your house under any circumstance if you can avoid it. It is very windy. You don't know what's going to happen. Trees are falling. Debris is going everywhere. It is not a safe condition. Please let this storm pass. The worst might be behind us, like y'all said, but the storm is still happening. So please again, stay indoors until this storm passes, and let the first responders do their job once it does pass before you decide to safely leave your house. Susie and Kurt?
Rick, are you still with the volunteer fire department down there in Hahnville? It seems like a good place, a safe place for you to be.
Say that one more time, Susie. I kind of got water in my ears. Say that one more time.
Sure. Just wondered if you're still with the volunteer fire department down there. Is that your location in Hahnville?
Susie, I apologize. I got water all up in my ear. I am with the fire department.
Okay, good. That's a safe place to be. Thanks, Rick. We'll check in with you a little later.
Dry out a little bit. Thank you, Rick.
And we just received word from the New Orleans 911 Center. AT&T and T-Mobile customers are having trouble getting through to 911 in New Orleans.
If you need to contact emergency services and you can't get through using 911, this is the alternative number right here, 504-671-3600, 504-671-3600.
And we'll go back now to WGNO's Ashley Hamilton. She was in the Holly Grove area on South Carrollton, where a couple of cars were up to the hood and over that with the water. Ashley, what are you finding now?
Yeah, Susie, I will tell you that now this entire side of the street is without power. One side has power, one side doesn't. We talked about how high this water was when we first got here. It's only getting higher. Only one side of this street is able to get cars to drive by. Now, I want to get you guys to take a look at this car right now. As you see, the water has gotten higher. And people are still driving past, stopping, actually taking pictures of it instead of being home where they are supposed to. Now, Francine did make landfall, but I will tell you that this area is only flooding more. I'm not sure what it's like down the street right now, but this area is seeing major winds. Debris are falling onto the ground. A lot of cars have started to actually slow down as the rain began picking up. But sadly, I have some people that are still speeding, you guys. You're supposed to be inside right now. The curfew started at 6 p.m. and it's until 7 a.m. to 7 a.m. in the morning, but the mayor is asking people to actually stay inside until 12 noon. As you see, the rain is not getting any better. You should just stay inside. Now, something else I want to let you guys know is that I'm not seeing as many cars this time around, just a couple stragglers. I've only saw at least one person walking through this rain. I asked them, what are you doing out here? They said, I had to come to the store. But as you see right now, this is about the rain. I want you guys to take a look at this car that's actually coming. Look how much water he is actually picking up. That is the side of the road that is actually filled with water that people are still taking their chances and riding through. Your car can get stuck in that water, people. As you see, the winds are not getting any better. You might as well just stay inside. Heed warnings that officials are telling you. We are under a flash flood warning until 9:30. Be sure to stay inside. We'll be back with more for you guys. Susie?
Ashley, we see the water in the street behind you. Is there any indication that it is close, even getting close to houses? I'm asking because we see the cars pushing wakes as they go behind you.
One more time, Kurt. I'm sorry. The winds are
I understand.
a little bad out here. I'm so sorry.
I totally understand. I have done what you're doing right now 100 times myself. So
No, you're good.
is the water close to getting in any houses?
Where I'm at right now, it's actually, it looks like a church mostly, but the church has a lawn in front and I cannot even see the lawn. It's filled with just water. There's nothing else that you're seeing on that side of the road. I'm scared to even go over there because there's no telling what's in that water or how high that water will get. I'm 5'3". When I tell you this whole side of the street is filled except for one side of the road that people can actually drive it. You saw that car that just made it through, but I cannot even see the grass on the other side of there. That's how deep and flooded that entire area is. This is the side of the street that's actually out of lights. There's no light poles that's up on this side or anything. All light that you're seeing is coming through from the other side of the street. So there's a lot going on out here, and this is another reason why people should be staying inside. There's no reason to be out here.
And when the streets flood like they are behind you, often the manhole covers will be removed and pushed off of where they should be. And that's another reason not to be walking around in the deep water because you can't see that the manhole cover is no longer there. So be very, very safe out there. Ashley Hamilton reporting for us.
Stay on the neutral ground, yeah.
Right, from the bottom of the bowl.
I will let you guys know that earlier in one of the press conference, officials did say that they did come out and clean the catch basins and clean the side of the roads. And they said as soon as water gets better and it's lower, they plan to hurry up and get out here and try to get as much of this water picked up out of the basins and everything as soon as they actually can when it's safe.
Oh, you can see it's really coming down, really strong wind too. So we'll check in with you a little later. Thank you, Ashley.
Now, one area that has been, at least so far, a lot less eventful is Jefferson Parish's lower lying areas, specifically Lafitte.
We'll go back to Jordan Lippincott. She's been there all day. Jordan.
Yeah, Susie and Kurt, it's kind of a pleasant surprise because when you think of Lower Jefferson Parish, you think of the worst. But fortunately, as of right now, it looks like Lower Jefferson Parish was spared. But I always feel like I don't want to say anything, and I never want to jinx anything. But hopefully the WGNO weather team knows that I'm not jinxing. We are in the town of Lafitte. The town of Jean Lafitte, but Lafitte is a little further south down LA 45. And the wind, when you all were with me earlier, the wind was really strong, but it's kind of died down a little bit. And the rain really isn't much right now. I think it may have stopped a little bit, probably a little bit of drizzling. You can hear the frogs now, so I guess a sign of hearing the frogs. Maybe things have calmed down a little bit. But earlier today, I want to show you a look at some of the video we captured from earlier today. We just worked our way down LA 45, different scenes that we were seeing. A look from the pier at the Lafitte Fisherman's Market. The wind was picking up earlier this afternoon. and we were seeing crews putting out sandbags, but then once we kept heading south down LA 45, that's when you really get into the Lafitte area. The town of Jean Lafitte, you run into it before you run into Lafitte, but it's kind of the general same area. But the thing is, people who live in Lafitte were under that mandatory evacuation order. But the highways, there was a little flooding on the highways, but it wasn't too bad. It's not as bad as what you typically see. I think the sandbags were certainly doing their job, and some people were staying indoors for the most part. We did talk to some kids earlier today, and they were telling me that they had stayed for Hurricane Ida, so they were certainly going to stay. Their family said, we're going to stay for this storm as well, and it kind of looks like the only problem was the wind and some flooding on the road, but trucks were able to get past. But I know that you all had checked in with Councilman Scott Walker earlier, and he had talked about how they were faced with some sewage issues, and the way we can help out the parish and people who live here is to conserve that water. And I did see that Councilman Walker, he had sent a message out earlier that the conserved water request may continue a few days. So even when you wake up tomorrow, just try to conserve that water as best as you can, because you don't want to run into more problems post-storm when you thought you were out of it. And talking about Grand Lafitte, because that's all, Grand Isle. Talking about Grand Isle, because that's also Lower Jefferson Parish, a curfew had been set for 1 o'clock. So those who live in Grand Isle, even though a mandatory evacuation order had been issued, those who live in Grand Isle, some stayed behind, but they were ordered to stay inside starting at 1 o'clock. But I'm telling you, so far, it seems like Lower Jefferson kind of spared Francine. It's really just the wind has been an issue, but I haven't heard from any town officials of any down trees, down power lines, but I'm continuously checking on that information, and of course I will bring you all the latest, but so far I don't think the wind has caused any severe damage in this area. Susie, Kurt?
So calm where you are, Jordan, and I'm sure that Ashley Hamilton would trade places with you because New Orleans is getting walloped. So you stay safe there. We'll check in with you probably again a little later.
Yeah, and Hahnville
Okay.
also still getting a lot of rain right now. We want to check in with our meteorologists and start with Chief Meteorologist Hank Allen with the latest on the rain situation and the wind as well.
Yeah, you know where Jordan is. She's looking pretty good. I mean, this center, as we've talked about really for the past several days, at this point, once the center is lifting north of your area, there is really nothing on the south side of that to continue to put you in this rainfall. And so Jordan down there in the Lafitte area, Jean Lafitte, I mean, you're going to get maybe a couple of wraparound showers there. That's about it, but pretty much done in that case. Now, you still have this intense rain across the I-10 corridor here in the metro area. From Metairie down into New Orleans, over there into St. Charles, St. John, St. James, still northern Lafourche Parish, but you can see how that line has been working up to the north. Now again, this storm will continue to dissipate and continue to weaken going forward. So the impacts that we have seen on the South Shore here over the past couple of hours is not going to translate, across the area to the north. You'll still get the heavy rain, you'll still get some wind, but it's not going to be as bad as what we've seen lately. And of course, earlier today, we were talking about would that core and the heaviest rainfall make its way to the metro New Orleans area. Indeed, it did. That's why we have some of that significant flooding in the city and then out towards the west along I-10 as well. Flash flood warnings in effect on the North Shore. We haven't seen the heaviest rain out there yet. You still have some intensity here on this South Shore area. But again, I think you're starting to see the impacts here of this dissipating a little bit. And that trend is going to continue over the next couple of hours. You've got a pretty heavy cluster of cells right here, sort of over in, let's say, Wagaman and those areas, Avondale, trying to wrap back into the city. So if that does that, that's going to cause a little bit more flooding. But again, you can start to see things gradually lifting north. And so all these areas that we're looking at so much rain, so much street flooding, we're starting to improve over on the West Bank there, over to Des Allemands. Now the focus here along I-10. The winds will start to subside as well on the South Shore. Checking some of our tower cameras. I mean, there is still a lot of lights on out there, so this is going to end up with a lot of power outages, but not as many, I think, as what we expected going into this system. Ground zero of this sort of around the Dulac to Homa area, both with storm surge and wind gusts in the 90s earlier today down in Dulac. And so again, the western side of the area here has definitely taken the brunt of this system as it's been pushing in. And then we look to the North Shore here as some of that rain continues to lift off to the north. And we've got those flash flood warnings. Brantley, still some gusty winds out there, obviously, but this has really been, I think, the headlines here, more of the heavy rain that we've seen over the past couple hours.
Yeah, over the past few hours, it's really been more of a rain and flooding issue than it has been a wind issue. And where Jordan Lippincott just was, things are really starting to dry out now from Lafitte down to the coast, really not seeing a ton of rain at all. We may still see a couple of more showers that pop up there, but for the most part, the Gulf Coast starting to dry out now for Louisiana, but we still have a few flash flood warnings in effect. The ones that are in effect for Homa, Chauvin, Dulac, those will expire here pretty soon within the next hour. And then we still have some for the New Orleans Metro westward, and that's where we're looking at some very heavy rainfall rates. We also have our most recent flash flood warnings for the North Shore. This is going to be from Hancock County through Hammond, so that includes Slidell, Mandeville, Madisonville, Covington, Lacombe, a lot of areas there that are going to see really heavy rainfall rates. And they are already seeing some of those right now, but we expect more rain to push in as the core of this storm pushes towards the north. So flash flood warnings in effect for a large portion of the area. Now, as we look at our radar, one thing we're watching here is this tail end of the feeder band that we've been talking about for a couple days now that has the possibility to have some rotating cells in it. So we could see more tornado warnings popping up for our Mississippi counties, especially as this feeder band starts to push on shore where we have more rotation within those storms. But you can see down by the Gulf Coast really starting to dry out there. We have a lot of dry air, a lot of wind shear that's tearing up the bottom part of the storm. So this isn't the typical radar presentation that you would see with a hurricane, especially a Category 2 hurricane at landfall. Pretty unusual scenario here, but we have a lot of wind shear, a lot of dry air that's really helping us out here. And overall, I think that's really going to help spare us from a lot of the wind damage impacts that we might see typically with a Category 2. Because a lot of times what happens is you'll have this eye. You'll have, things that get wet and the wind picks things up and loosens things up on the northern side of the storm. And then after the eye passes, a lot of the wind switches around to the opposite direction. And that is a lot of times when you see trees start to snap, things start to fly off. And that's when you get a lot of debris flying and start to see more uprooted trees. So because we don't have a ton of rain on the south side, and the winds there are also dying down pretty quickly. We have a sharp cutoff of the gradient here with the winds on the west side of the storm, the southwest side. I think we're going to be spared a lot from the storm damage that we would typically see. And also, it's a pretty fast-moving storm, too, so we're not seeing really long, drawn-out effects here. It's moving pretty quickly towards the northeast still. Now, our Futurecast model has been doing pretty well tonight with our estimated wind gusts. Now our forecast here still calling for wind gusts of about 40 to 50 miles per hour. It's showing near Empire, 62 miles an hour over the next half hour to 1 hour there. So we could still continue to see these tropical storm force wind gusts. I'm going to go hour by hour here. 10 o'clock, still seeing 40 to 55 miles an hour from Gramercy up through Ponchatoula, 40 in Kentwood, Slidell, 48 miles an hour. So certainly seeing some high wind gusts there, still maintaining tropical storm force wind gusts. At least until about midnight or so. And I think after that, that's when we'll see things really start to improve pretty quickly from the south to the north, with the inland parts of the North Shores still seeing some of those winds lingering a little bit through the wee hours of tomorrow morning. But overall, really not seeing the wind sticking around for too long because this is such a fast-moving system. So the main thing here that we're worried about at this time is going to be the very quick flash flooding threat developing across the New Orleans metro. They've seen a lot of rain over the past hour or so. They've seen 3 to 4 inches in some spots even higher than that, and it hasn't come to an end yet. We're still seeing a little bit more moisture feeding into that band. So it looks like New Orleans will probably get cleared out of this first, and then it'll be areas to the west, but it's still going to take a little bit of time.
Yeah, another hour or so probably here on the South Shore, like you said, maybe 2 hours on the northern end as you get up towards Laplace, those areas. But yeah, Brantley, I think we're finally starting to see, I just checked the latest intensity from the hurricane center down to 75. Not that that really matters at this point in the storm.
Yeah.
We're just watching this move through. But I think what you're seeing here is we're finally starting to see some substantial weakening of this system from what we've seen so far over the past 2 to 3 hours. I mean, yes, you do still have some heavy rain here along the I-10 corridor. It's not as heavy, though, as it has been at times. Now, still flash flooding ongoing. No question about that. But starting to diminish that a little bit. There's that rain band that Brantley was talking about. I mean, all these little cells offshore here in that band, and we were highlighting that in our forecast over the past couple of days. All those little cells are going to be spinning around, just rotating. And so wherever those come on shore, likely that band will continue to slide east over towards Biloxi to Pascagoula to Mobile. Tornado threat as those cells move inland. South shore here, not really a tornado threat, more of a rain and wind event. I mean, we can certainly still hear the wind here in the Galleria. Keep in mind we're on the 8th floor, though. Ground level not quite that bad. Still a lot of power. There's a lot of power out, but there's really a lot of power on when you think about a hurricane coming over the area. So many times we've had power outages just with, breezes over the past couple of years here. And so things are actually holding up better than I expected, I think, across the area, especially considering how wet it has been lately. And so, this is going to work out okay. The exception, of course, of that has been to the southwestern parts of the area, closer to that core, closer to the center, Terrebonne, Lafourche. I mean, this was, pretty much ground zero, not just for the flooding, but for the wind as well. We saw wind gusts into the 70s in Homa, 90s down in Dulac, big-time storm surge flooding there. We've seen some video of a couple of boats sort of getting loose and banging around each other around Dulac there. You've seen widespread storm surge flooding, some of it pretty high, probably in the, if I had to guess, 8 to 10 foot range in some of the areas right along the coast. And obviously we'll wait for the surveys to come out for the verification of that. And so now you're just waiting for this whole system to start to move off to the north. And I think that core, the movement was the same officially, but because that center was so wide and that core was so broad, even though it was moving, the impacts in the rain band really wasn't moving that much. It was just sort of sitting over us here along Highway 90. But now, you notice we don't necessarily have that circular look anymore. We don't really have that broad center at this point. And so really, I think we're starting to see this thing get on the move as we anticipated, because now it's just sort of that flat, east to west zone of rainfall here. You don't have this broad center where you're trying to wait for stuff to move out as it's wrapping around. So we're going to continue to see this system lift to the north very quickly. And I think cross over the Mississippi border by somewhere around 11 to midnight. So, of course, we'll stay with you here as long as this is impacting our area. But what you're really going to see here is the focus translate to the North Shore, but not as it has on the South Shore. This is not something where we're taking, 4 to 5 inch rainfall rates, crossing it over the lake, putting it in the Florida parishes and that sort of thing. And we do have the flash flood warning up into the northern half of the area here. And so we don't want to discount that. And obviously, you've got, everybody saying stay inside. You don't need to be out and about. But again, now we're looking at really about probably 60% of the area being impacted by this, and as opposed to everybody. Now the concern here is we are still trying to get this heavy rain to move north of I-10, and so you have this last little hook here coming around. I hate to even use that term because that makes it sound like it's a tornado, but this last little dip on that rainfall that's coming back around here into, as I mentioned, Wagaman along Highway 90. That's going to start to fill back in towards the city here. So we're still dealing with some very heavy rainfall potential here in the immediate New Orleans area. We're still going to be dealing with that street flooding here over the next couple of hours. It's going to take a while for that to calm down. Things are improving out to the west. Hanville, where Rick has been, still raining, but not as bad. You get down towards Des Allemands. Now you're really starting to see less rain there as you get down I-310 to Highway 90. Very heavy rain still applause on over through the metro area. And so this system will continue to lift towards the north. But boy, I tell you, that's still some really heavy rain here from Jefferson to River Ridge, Wagaman, Avondale, over towards New Orleans, and even part of Gretna probably still seeing some of that very heavy rain. Up on the North Shore here, it just hasn't been as bad. I mean, we're getting the rain. We have that flash flood warning over there along I-12, but it hasn't been as bad. And so some of that heavy rain from the South Shore is going to lift north, but again, the storm continues to weaken here. And I think by now we're looking at this and we can say this is starting to really weaken pretty quickly. And so we're getting back down into more tropical storm impacts, gusts into the 40s, maybe some 50s at times, but mainly 40s. Eventually you'll drop those gusts down into the 30s. You'll get that rain moving north. And so lesser impacts here across the northern half of the area, the way it looks right now. And then once we can get that rain out of the South Shore and the metro, we'll start to be able to pump that water out as well. Southern Mississippi, not too many impacts at the moment. And of course, those bands coming on shore, you see the lightning indicating the stronger activity. That's where we would see maybe a little bit higher tornado threat as we go through the next few minutes and the next hour or so. But for the most part, still that heavy rain threat as Brantley's got the time frame over there on some of those flash flood warnings for us. Obviously, you don't want to be out driving around in this, though. Brantley, everybody just needs to stay inside.
Yeah, at this point, if you're not staying inside, go inside.
Yeah, where are you going?
Yeah, the flash flood warnings we have right now for the South Shore, one of them is about to be upgraded here in just a few moments to a flash flood emergency, which is the highest level of flash flood warning that you can get. So many people are about to get another one of those alerts on their phones where you have that noise coming across alerting you to the flash flood emergency, and that's going to be for portions of Orleans Parish, Jefferson Parish, and possibly there might also include St. Charles in that as well. So this is basically going to be from the Lakeview area all the way through Kenner, and it looks like the rainfall rates there really haven't slowed down a lot at all over the past couple of hours. So they're still seeing a lot of significant heavy rainfall. It's moving in very, very quickly. And we're looking here now at some of the brighter shades of red popping back up here again. And Hank and I were talking earlier that in saying that it's not usual that we see the really bright shades of red here on the radar when it comes to tropical storms and hurricanes. A lot of times it's sort of just the yellow and oranges here. It's this, kind of uniform level of rain across the storm with the higher rainfall rates a little bit closer to the core. But here it is a little bit of a sloppier storm. So we are seeing some heavier bands there. And now we're seeing these thunderstorms just kind of training over the same areas over and over again, especially right across the South Shore here. That's where we are looking at the potential for some really significant flooding. But you can see it's clearing out very quickly. So we may have this flash flood emergency issued here pretty shortly because so many areas are underwater right now. We have that rain coming down still pretty efficiently, but within the next hour or two, I would say that most of this rain pushes toward the north and will start to finally dry out. It's going to take some time for that water to go down, especially in New Orleans, but I do think that we will start to see some improvement here for most of the South Shore within the next 1 hour to 2 hours at most. The North Shore still has that flash flood warning in effect for areas from Hancock County all the way through Tangipahoa Parish, and that includes the lakefront in St. Tammany Parish there. Now, they're not seeing as heavy of rain as those on the South Shore, but still a significant amount of rain there, so not the best weather to be out in at all. So, of course, it's recommended that everyone stays home right now. We're also continuing to watch this feeder band that's rolling in here. There's a lot of lightning activity starting to fire up with this one, so we're going to be watching this here to see if we have any of these rotating storm cells. We haven't seen any more tornado warnings since the last one about an hour ago, or sorry, it was about half an hour ago. But we still could see a couple more of these very brief tornado warnings pop up here. So, of course, we'll keep watching that if we see any of these rotating cells start to push on shore. But for the majority of us, this is really going to turn more now into a rain event rather than a wind event. We still could see some potential wind gusts, tropical storm force here over the next several hours. Not looking at really high wind gusts at, in the 60 to 70 mile per hour range. We did just get a wind gust report from St. James Parish, and that was at 62 miles an hour, I believe. So we're still seeing some gusts out there, but overall they're starting to come down some as the system weakens down pretty quickly, and it moves to the north also pretty quickly. So we still could see wind gusts over the next few hours, 30, 40, 50 miles an hour. Some of these numbers on here popping up at 55 miles an hour. So still could see some gusty winds, and we've had all this rain out there. Again, we could see some trees coming down, some uprooted trees, so that's going to be a concern here, especially when it comes to power outages. But we're not seeing those widespread, continuous winds that are, in the high tropical storm force category there. So we're not seeing widespread wind damage right now. This is mainly going to be a flood threat, at least for the next couple of hours. Hank?
I think you're exactly right. Some reports, like you said, 45 miles per hour sort of around the metro area, but nothing too concerning at this point. And again, look, we're looking outside and, there's a lot of lights still on there. So good news there. For the now, we'll send it back to Kurt and Susie. I know we're taking some coverage around the rest of the area here.
All right, thank you, guys. We want to get to CLECO spokesperson, Fran Phoenix. She is on the phone. We've already talked about Entergy. Let's check the power situation with CLECO.
Fran, we know that coastal parishes have had a lot of power outages. Some are your customers. And then you have a lot of customers on the North Shore. Who's getting affected the most by this?
In St. Tammany, we have approximately 1,900 customers without power. Statewide, we have 18,000. So looking at the map, the outages in St. Tammany are spread out. There are some in Covington, Mandeville, Abita Springs. I actually spoke with our distribution operations manager shortly before this call, and he was giving me an update. A lot of the damage that they're seeing is tree-related, trees falling into CLECO's right-of-way, knocking power lines down, which, of course, will cause an outage. In terms of restoration, 1,900 approximately. It was 1,800 shortly, but the weather is moving through, and so that number went up a little. But we're not faring too bad, considering 1,900. That we're, of course, 1,900 is 1,900 customers, and that's our priority. But we feel like this is not as bad as it could have been.
Well, 18,000 overall, so you do have some customers in other places, obviously, who've lost power.
Yes, not St. Tammany, St. Mary Parish, Iberia Parish, the Acadiana region. That's where the majority of those outages are when we look at our map. So the Acadiana region, that's CLECO has about 20,000 customers there. They are seeing some significant damage there. So the majority of our statewide outages are in the Acadiana region. But St. Tammany does have about 1,900. And the thing that we try to focus on at this point is making sure our customers are safe. And, of course, once the conditions are safe, our workers will begin to assess the damage by land and air if needed. We're going to look at our transmission and our distribution lines, inspect them, and start making repairs. Transmission lines are those really tall structures that you see out in the middle of fields. They are critical to the power restoration process because they carry the electricity from the power plants to substations. And that these substations deliver the electricity to our distribution lines, which are the smaller structures, and then they deliver the electricity to the homes and businesses. And so then we'll focus on the critical community services like hospitals, nursing homes, water systems, fire and police departments if they have outages. And then we start restoring power to the greatest number of customers in the shortest amount of time. So the key is damage assessment, looking and getting in there and seeing what is going on. And as I said, I talked with our operations manager, and he's saying most of the damage that they're seeing in St. Tammany is scattered, and it's tree related.
All right, and let's talk about the process moving forward, because people might have expectations that the first sign of light, the bucket trucks head out. But there's a very methodical damage assessment process you have to go through. Isn't that correct?
Oh, for sure. So, of course, the safety of our employees is a priority, and the safety of our customers as well. And because every storm is different, we monitor conditions such as wind speeds, lightning, flooding, and anything else that could pose a hazard to our personnel. For example, it's not safe for our crews to be elevated in the bucket of a bucket truck when sustained winds exceed 35 miles per hour. So crews can do some work as long as it's not from a bucket truck. And, of course, they are available for, like, an emergency situation, even though, for an emergency. An outage is an emergency, but if there's a wire sparking or a fire, that's going to be considered something that has to be handled right then and there. And so in general, most of the restoration work, the process, it doesn't get fully underway until the wind speeds fall below that threshold. So that's key because, as you said, once to the customer, it's like, okay, I want my power back on right now. But there definitely is a process to it. So we have to look at, is it safe, first of all, for the crews to be out there? They're on standby. They're working in areas where they can work. But if the wind speeds are really high, they can't be in the bucket truck. So this is where you kind of have to watch, and sometimes you are waiting patiently, and we appreciate our customers' patience. But it definitely is a process to this. But with having 1,800 customers out, that's not, a huge significant number. So we feel confident that these customers are going to be restored as quickly as possible.
Oh, you know what? They really want days, though. They want you to say, Fran, everybody wants you to say, well, within 24 hours or within 48 hours tops, because, we've had such horror stories after Hurricane Ida, and not necessarily with CLECO, but with other power companies in the area. And people are like, I cannot wait a whole week with 90-degree weather.
Well, I'm not supposed to give time.
I'm sure you're not, yeah.
But I feel comfortable saying for St. Tammany, unless something else happens, it won't take us a week to restore power to 1,800 customers.
Okay.
If you'll let me say that. No. But as you said, we've had a lot of hurricanes, and some have been really, really bad. Ida, Delta, Laura. And so I totally understand customers getting concerned, whenever there's a hurricane. Oh, is this going to be a long restoration effort? Well, the key is damage assessment. So the sooner that we get in and start assessing the damage and making repairs, the sooner we'll be able to give customers some type of estimated restoration time, because we do that. But we can't do it until we start looking at what we're dealing with. So surely by, I would say in the morning, we're going to actually have some information. We'll have more information. I don't know, if it'll be specific times, but we'll definitely be able to give an update. And we've been talking with the media all day today, and really since this got underway.
No
giving
doubt,
updates.
No doubt after a storm, if you could be in the magic wand business, that would be the business to be in. But Fran Phoenix, we certainly appreciate your time speaking with us about CLECO's power outages.
And of course, I was asking for you, Kurt, North Shore citizen.
Oh, I'm getting updates. Don't
You're
worry.
getting updates. Well, let's take a look now
Thank
at the.
you.
Thank you,
Thank
Fran.
you.
Thank you so much. And now we're going to check on the energy power outage map. More than 200,000 people do not have power statewide. About 50,000 energy customers have lost power in Jefferson Parish, and about 30,000 customers have lost power in Orleans Parish. Terrebonne and Lafourche parishes, nearly 30,000 people have lost power in Lafourche. About 26,000 have lost power in Terrebonne. And in Jefferson Parish, about 20,000 customers have lost power. So we're looking again statewide, 200,000 ballpark energy customers are without power, and there's of course no telling when that will be restored. We have our news crew that has been in St. Charles Parish all day and still tonight in Hahnville.
And we're waiting to see when that 310 corridor, which has been hit so hard all evening, when things finally begin to clear up there. It looks like we might be on the cusp of that. Let's go back to WGNO's Rick Gogrieve in Hahnville for us tonight. Rick.
Yes, Susie and Kern, I'm back here with Fireman Cameron to get a little bit of an update on exactly what's going to be going on here, or what we've been hearing exactly over here in Hahnville and really the parish in general. So kind of give me a little bit of an update on what y'all have been hearing, kind of tell me about the situation going on, not only really here, but just in the parish in general.
So what we've been hearing is we got a lot of trees down, a lot of streets being flooded out right now. We having a lot of calls to our 911 center. Our fire trucks cannot get out on the streets right now. This wind is just way too dangerous for us to get out right now. But please, everyone, stay off the road right now. Do not come out until the first responders and your emergency officials tell you to, is that it's okay to come out. But yeah, we got flooding on the street right here behind us. Trees are down everywhere. Just please, everyone, stay inside. Stay off the roads. Don't leave your house right now.
And you know, we were just informed that we're in a flash flood emergency now rather than a flash flood warning until 11:45. So, you know, what exactly is the difference between the two of a warning and an emergency? You know, what exactly can we expect different?
From my understanding, what a warning and emergency is emergency. It is going to happen right now. Warning is be prepared. But like I said again, everybody stay in your house, stay off the streets. Don't go wandering around right now. Don't go sightseeing. It's not the time to do it. It is very, very dangerous out on these streets right now. It really is.
Perfect. And like he's saying, ladies and gentlemen, it is a very, very important time to stay indoors. As y'all can see again, the wind is still going. The rain, it's kind of on and off right now. It might be a little lower, but like I was saying, it does go on and off. The rain. It's kind of kicking. The lights are flickering on and off. We've been seeing outages here. It's just kind of a very, very unknown situation right now. Susie and Kurt, back to y'all.
Okay, it does look a little calmer there, the wind and the water behind you. Thanks, Rick, for reporting for us there.
And when we talk about that flash flood emergency, if you were going to plot it east to west, according to our weather team, you'd be looking at about Lakeview to Kenner. I'm sorry. So what we want to do, let's talk to our weather team then about that. We want to also get back to our Ashley Hamilton, but we understand she's having microphone problems right now. So let's go ahead and talk. Brantley, talk to us about this flash flood emergency. You said probably if it were going to be on plotted on a map, you're talking Kenner to Lakeview, essentially.
Yeah, so this new flash flood emergency, it goes until 11:45, and it starts from Lakeview. It goes through Kenner. It actually goes a little bit into St. Charles Parish as well. So we are seeing this this expanded a little bit compared to the flash flood warning that we had just a little while ago. This flash flood emergency is replacing that. And we were asking earlier, or they were asking earlier, what's the difference between a flash flood warning and a flash flood emergency? A flash flood emergency is just the highest level that a flash flood warning can be. It's the highest threat to life. It's the highest threat to damage or for damage. So we are looking at an imminent threat here for considerable flooding across the area. We've already seen water pushing across the roads there. It's starting to impact, some structures as well, according to some reports that we're getting from the Weather Service. So we're seeing rainfall rates still of around 3 to 5 inches, some locations up to 6 inches per hour. We could typically see with a thunderstorm, in the summertime, about 2 to 3 inches per hour. So this is a significant amount of rain coming through right now. We still have these flash flood warnings for a large portion of the area. The ones that are a little bit farther south right now, these ones are going to expire likely within the next 30 minutes to 45 minutes. I have to check the exact timing on each one of those, but I think most of those will be allowed to expire in just the next hour. But for areas a little bit farther north where we're still dealing with that really heavy rain, we're still seeing these really high rainfall rates coming through right along the lakefront. So this is going to now, it looks like, more towards the lakefront airport going right along the water's edge there all the way through Laplace. That's where we see the highest rainfall rates right now. This is about to lift north and go across the causeway. And as we pull this thing a little bit farther north on the map here, we still have this flash flood warning in effect for the North Shore lakefront. So that continues until at least 9:45. I wouldn't be surprised to see another one of those warnings issued for a longer period of time, because as this system moves across the lake, there is the potential that it encounters more moisture over Lake Pontchartrain and Lake Maurepas that will help feed into the storm a little bit and allow it to regenerate some more rain activity. So it doesn't look like this is really going to be losing any steam as far as rain goes. Now, this is weakening down as far as the wind impacts go, and that is going to continue to be the trend here through the rest of the evening. I expect this to likely become a tropical storm within the next hour. It's already weakened down quite a bit since landfall, and the bottom half of the storm is still very dry. There's still a lot of wind shear, so we're not really seeing that wraparound moisture. We're not seeing the wraparound wind effect either, as much as we typically would see with a Category 2 hurricane at landfall. So still seeing some wind impacts over here, but just not as much as we did earlier, or not as much as what we were initially expecting, because this is just such a sloppy, messy storm. We're still looking at the potential for wind gusts of 50 to 55 miles an hour, though. We could see some spots possibly getting up to about 60. And if we have some stronger thunderstorms here embedded within that really thick band right around the center of the storm, or that really thick feeder band going through Mississippi, we could see some locally higher wind gusts, but this is really transitioning more into a flood threat and less a wind threat, at least for the next couple of hours here. So if you have already, gone through most of this and you haven't seen a ton of wind damage, I wouldn't be too concerned about potential wind damage at this point. It's not to say it can't happen. It certainly can happen, especially if things have been loosened up throughout the day and knocked around a little bit. But we're not looking at the wind getting any higher from this point. So it looks like this is pretty much what we're going to get as far as wind goes, and we'll continue to see this system weakening down some. But that rainfall is going to continue to be an issue here, at least for the next few hours. I do expect that we will start to see some improvement here on the South Shore pretty quickly. Once this thing lifts to the north, it's still moving at a pretty fast rate as well. I do think New Orleans will probably start to dry out here, or start to see the rain coming to an end probably within the next 30 to 45 minutes. So we still have that flash flood emergency. It goes for quite a while, till 11:45, because again, it takes a long time for that water to recede. And if you're in New Orleans especially, it's going to take a little bit longer than those that might be a little bit more elevated, a little bit higher up above ground level. So we have the pumps going, the city of New Orleans asking people to conserve water as well. But it looks like the rain is going to really shift to the north over the lake in the next 30 to 45 minutes. And then at that point, most of the South Shore should be drying out.
Yeah, I think you're right on the money there, Brantley. Boy, we've seen some really heavy rainfall in Mount Zone. We're going to be talking about this coming up. We're talking about trees falling down in St. Charles, those areas. I mean, look at this. In these zones here, 7 to 8 inches of rain estimated just in the past 6 hours by the radar. So we'll talk more about that in these flash flood warnings coming up. Susie, though, we'll go back to you for the time being.
Yes, Hank and Brantley, just want to let you know that a few minutes ago we were asking for the new alternate number for AT&T and T-Mobile customers who are having trouble getting through to 911, but we've just received a NOLA Ready alert saying that that problem has been resolved, that they can now reach 911. However, we're also getting some reports, Kurt, that the Sewerage and Water Board, after practically bragging about how many megawatts of power they had, more than ever, 70 megawatts, they only needed so much, less than that, is having trouble powering the pumps.
Yeah, the Sewage and Water Board, this is the message, and if you're signed up for the NOLA Ready alerts, then you probably got this as well. If not, it's good for you to know. Sewage and Water Board New Orleans experiencing impacts at pump stations due to power outages and other issues. Please conserve water until the system is back to full capacity. Sewage and Water Board reporting pump issues, did not say which pumps in which areas. But we know one of the areas that is getting pretty heavily hit in New Orleans, and that is what we would call the bottom of the bowl.
Yeah, the Carrollton area, South Carrollton area, near the Tree Streets. This one's near Olive Street, and that's where WGNO's Ashley Hamilton is. Ashley, are you still in the neutral ground, trying to avoid the water on either side?